What's up, guys? I don't usually review TV, but Ryan Murphy's Ed Gein just came out. I binge watched it, and oh my god, I have to talk about this show. So let's get into it.
What did you do?
What's up, guys? I just got through watching Ed Gein. This was a show, we'd talked about this on the last Hit the Bricks. We did like a reaction to the trailer or whatever, but I remember I was like, oh my god, I gotta see that. Especially since Ryan Murphy's behind it, who did Dahmer. Dahmer was incredible. First off, hats off to Ryan Murphy for tackling these extremely uncomfortable stories of these serial killers, because when you kind of delve into true crime and these serial killers and the most infamous ones like Ted Bundy, Dahmer, it all kind of traces back to Ed Gein as far as, like, I guess the modern serial killers go. Sure, there's been tons of serial killers, you know, way before Ed Gein, Jack the Ripper. But Ed Gein is definitely I guess a big check mark in terms of most infamous serial killers. He's, you know, we still talk about him to this day. There have been 3 iconic movies that are based off of Ed Gein. You got Psycho, you got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you got Silence of the Lambs. And all 3 of those movies, they're not just big hits. They're landmark type movies. I mean, Psycho, sort of like the birth of a new era in horror. The birth of really kind of the slasher. It all really starts with Psycho. And really think about it this way. We might not have Halloween without Ed Gein. That's the crazy thing here. If Ed Gein, you know, the murders never happened, and you know, and how crazy that whole story is, Psycho wouldn't have been made. And then maybe because of Psycho not being made, maybe we never got Halloween. So yeah, looking forward to diving into this show. I think it's incredible. And I will say, I was going to watch this no matter the reviews, but my daughter came over today and I said, you know, I just finished the show and I was like, you got to watch Ed Gein. This show's incredible. And she's like, really? Because the reviews have been pretty bad for the show. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? Who is ripping this show apart? This is insane. No pun intended, of course. But to me, after watching a show of this quality, and there's not one dull episode out of the 8 episodes. Every episode is like integral to the plot. For people to rip this show apart, that's insane to me. I haven't like delved into the reviews. I don't know what people are saying about this show. I guess I'll keep it that way, and I'll tell you what I think about the show. Maybe it's because I'm a horror fan. I think as a horror fan, most horror people in the community know of Ed Gein. We know of the importance of Ed Gein. And by the way, guys, this isn't me like glorifying Ed Gein or anything like that. Absolutely not. What the guy did was absolutely disgusting and heinous, and he is so mentally disturbed, and that's all covered in this show. So, you know, and I do hear this complaint from, I guess, non-horror viewers all the time, like, why do you watch this stuff? Why do you watch this stuff? And to us, it's more of like an escape, right, from our own crazy lives. And everybody has their own certain flavors in movies that they like. And I just happen to be a big horror fan. To me, it's a roller coaster. That's what horror movies are. Real life, that's completely different than watching a horror movie to me, okay? But Ed Gein, his heinous crimes inspired, you know, a lot of groundbreaking horror movies. So, you know what? Before I go off on a tangent, because I can do that in my reviews sometimes, I guess let's dive into the show. Let's give you a quick plot synopsis. Let's talk about what I liked and didn't like. I will probably be talking some spoilers in this. So if you don't want to know anything about the show, then I'd say maybe skip the review. Usually when I do TV reviews anyway, I'm going to talk some spoilers. So this takes place in the 50s in Wisconsin. Ed Gein, he's a farmer. He lives with his mother. He has a brother. And eventually his brother dies. And in the show, it looks like he killed his brother. We'll talk about the actual truth compared to the show in a few. But I'm just going to kind of cover the show right now. But Ed Gein's relationship with his mother is quite damaging. His mother is just very, very abusive. Any idea of not just having, a girlfriend, but also having friends in general is frowned upon, according to her. Just imagine like the most controlling, mother that you could possibly have. And I'm sure some of us probably have had controlling mothers, but this is like the maximum amount of control you can possibly imagine, so much that it's damaging to the child. And one big question about Ed Gein is, it's clear that he is mentally disturbed, but the question is, was it always that when he was even born? Because he had like a normal IQ from my research, but or did the mother create this? Nobody really knows 100% the answer to that question, but the mother definitely didn't help. Laurie Metcalf plays the mother. She is fantastic in this role, but I got to give massive, massive props to Charlie Hunnam. This is the type of character that can really screw up an actor, probably. I can imagine Charlie Hunnam going home from work after some of the stuff that he had to do in this show. He really had to transform himself. And Charlie Hunnam's a very good-looking actor, but you lose yourself in the actual character when you're watching this show. And a lot of those good looks kind of shed away, at least in my opinion, because I'm seeing the character of Ed Gein. There's a specific cadence to his dialect, the way he talks. And he really just had to kind of bury himself in this role. Not just, vocally, but also physically. And I think it's an award-worthy performance. I think it's one of the most unforgettable performances of the year in my mind. I really appreciate great acting, and when an actor can immerse himself in a role and make the audience forget that that's an actor, like this show does, then, you got to give it props. Another really strong character is Adeline, played by Susanna Son. Adeline was Ed Gein's neighbor. And if you look into the backstory here, some accounts say that she had like an on and off relationship with Ed Gein for like 20 years. But then she recanted one of the stories, stating that she didn't really have that close of a relationship. So she is a big question mark, not in this show, but also in real life. And to be honest, this is a character. Yeah, I think she's important to the show, but you could have done an Ed Gein show or movie without this character and still portrayed who he was as a character. But this show would have you believe that she actually aided and helped him, not with the murders, but with like digging up graves. And in the show, she's just a very disturbed character. There's a section in here where she like goes to New York. She's a little bit narcissistic. She wants fame, but she's lost. There's a beautifully done scene between her and her mother. What is it about mothers in this show? But her mother is very calm and, kind of the opposite in terms of demeanor of Ed Gein's mother, but no less damaging, because Adeline comes back from New York. They're having this conversation at the dinner table, and her mother just unloads on her and tells her that she literally purposefully fell down the stairs trying to kill her as a child when she was in the womb. And I think this behavior is a reflection of the times. This is the 50s. This is Wisconsin, middle America. It's extremely cold. And that sort of mimics the behavior of the people at the time. Not saying that everybody was like this, but I think Wisconsin itself is sort of a character in this show. And maybe it kind of aided in who Ed Gein would become. And some of my viewers might live in Wisconsin, and I don't mean that as a negative or anything. I'm sure Wisconsin today is different than it was in the 50s. And yes, I have lived in, some colder environments. I lived in like Spokane, Washington, near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Lived in Clovis, New Mexico, which actually surprisingly got quite cold. So I have lived in some of these little podunk towns that are kind of in the middle of nowhere, especially Clovis, New Mexico. Now, another pivotal character in this is Bernice. She is the one that got Ed Gein caught. It's this older lady. She only has a son. Her son is very, very close to her, who happens to work for the police department. And Ed Gein sort of has a relationship with her, a very quick relationship, but it ends up in murder. And so the son going to look for her, that leads him to Ed Gein's house. And this is that gruesome discovery that they find all the dead remains from the bodies that he has dug up, but they also find Bernice's body hanging in the barn, and it is not for the squeamish. So this is about the middle of the show. After this point, this is where Ed Gein is caught. He ends up going to the mental facility. And then the rest of the show is sort of using Ed Gein to help capture other serial killers, and one that they're looking for happens to be Ted Bundy. And I think this might be the part of the show that people might have an issue with because it sort of encourages the viewer to sympathize with Ed Gein, but I didn't look at it that way at all. They display the heinous crimes that he did, and I don't think his later years take anything away from that. He was clearly just a very disturbed, damaged person in the worst possible sense. But he even offered to take the lie detector test because he was just that screwed up in the head, and maybe he had blackouts, maybe he didn't remember a lot of the stuff, who knows. So now I want to jump into the filmmaking portion of the review because Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are actually covered in this TV show, and I think it's done so beautifully. This show, to me, is so unique because most of these serial killer type shows, even like music biopics, they sort of follow the same template. And you see the early years of the killer, and all the way to the murders, and then the aftermath. And it's the same old thing over and over. Dahmer did it as well. Dahmer was beautifully directed, but it still followed that template. This show, it sort of bounces back and forth, and it does it purposefully, and I think it does it very effectively because you wouldn't want to front load the Ed Gein stuff and then jump to later his influence and these movies that are being made. No, they kind of insert them at certain points throughout the show. Like first you'll see Psycho, and they really go deep into Hitchcock creating Psycho, the effect that it has on Anthony Perkins, and some really great stuff. And then it goes into like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you see a very young Tobe Hooper stating that his aunt and uncle lived down the road from Ed Gein, and the story like really freaked him out when he was young, and it inspired him to create Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there is a small section in here about Silence of the Lambs concerning Buffalo Bill, and they sort of mirror the events of Ed Gein's past. Like for instance, they show the shower scene right in Psycho, but alongside that, they literally show Ed Gein in his own deranged mind stabbing Adeline in the shower. And I think that scene from a horror standpoint is done beautifully, and it's graphic. Like this is like, what if Psycho, the shower scene, was shot today? Because we know it wouldn't be shot the same way it was back in 1960. And I think it was perfect for that time, the way it was shot. It was groundbreaking. They show the reaction of the audience when they're watching Psycho in the theater, and they would swear that they're actually seeing intrusion points and blood, and they see very little of that stuff, almost no intrusions. They don't show the actual Janet Leigh shower scene. They show more of the real life shower scene with Ed Gein dressed up in Mother's getup, stabbing Adeline in color. And I think that's how a scene like that would be filmed today. It made me think, if you were going to remake Psycho like they did back in, I think it was 1990, that's the way they should have done it. Because it's different. It's more like updated for, I guess, the modern audience. But you can see how much of Psycho was taken from Ed Gein's story and his relationship with his mother. I mean, there are scenes in this show that really parallel Psycho with Norman and his mother. Lastly, let's talk about the violence and stuff that's not for the squeamish, and should they have shown some of the stuff they did. And I think the elephant in the room is Ed Gein. How do I put this? He would dig up graves, and he would, let's just say, violate dead corpses. They show it in this show. They show some pretty startling stuff, but I can't fault Ryan Murphy for doing this, because I think if you're going to cover Ed Gein's crimes and how heinous they are, then I think you have to kind of show some of that stuff, because you want the audience to really feel the horror that this guy did. But I do think all the violence, it's not there just for violence sake. It's there to cover what this guy did. And again, it's not for the squeamish. It definitely doesn't hold back. I think this is the best TV show of the year. I guess it sort of made me realize that the new Alien show, I did enjoy it. I guess just, it was entertaining. But this is on another whole level. This tapped into a lot more different emotions when you're watching it. Entertainment kind of being second to just the drama and the horror of it. You're definitely going to need like a hug and a role model and a warm bath after watching this show, because it's going to sit with you for sure. As far as TV shows go, if I were to give it a rating, yeah, Trapped on an Island. This show was amazing, and I'm still in shock that it didn't resonate with some people. I don't know. Is it maybe just non-horror fans? Like, if you're a big horror fan, I'd be shocked if you didn't like the show. I think it's very effective, okay? So yeah, that's my review for Ed Gein. Wow. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of this show. I'm really looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. On Fridays, we do Free Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Become a channel member. Buy me coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I love you guys.